Zelenskyy calls checkmate. Donald Trump surrenders and surrenders publicly with shame and humiliation. Donald Trump sent Marco Rubio to this NATO meeting in Sweden, where Rubio announced the U.S. was officially quitting, was surrendering its role in having any mediated discussions between Ukraine and Russia. So whereas Donald Trump promised that even before day one in office, it would be so easy for him to bring peace between Ukraine and Russia, officially Marco Rubio announced in Sweden at this NATO meeting that the U.S. is out, no longer going to have a role in mediated negotiations. This has happened at the same time Ukrainian drones are successfully reaching into Moscow. In the past 12 hours, Ukrainian drones were able to hit port infrastructure in the Novorossiysk, Russia region. This is this Black Sea hub, critical area that Russia uses to transport weapons and to transport oil. Also, Ukraine was able to hit the Syzran oil refinery in Russia's Samara region. Over and over again, Ukraine is hitting these big Russian oil depots. Let me bring you to what went down yesterday when Marco Rubio was there in Sweden and saying, we're done with peace talks. America's out. What we did has not been able to yield results. Surrender by Donald Trump and his weak, cowardly, and pathetic regime. Play this clip.
Yeah, the peace negotiations on Ukraine under American leadership. Let me just say, we got involved, okay? Because we were told we were the only ones that could do it. We were the only ones that the Russians and the Ukrainians would talk to. So we got involved. They were not fruitful, unfortunately. That's the play. We stand ready to continue to play that role. Despite leaks that are not true, despite stories out there about us forcing the Ukrainians to take this position or that position, which are not true, if we see an opportunity to pull together talks that are productive, not counterproductive, and that have the chance to be fruitful, we're prepared to play that role. There are no such talks occurring at this time, but we hope that will change, because that war can only end with a negotiated settlement. It will not end with a military victory by one side or the other, at least from a traditional standpoint of how military victories are defined. So it will have to lead, and if we can play a role in making that happen, the president is very much interested in doing it. We just, over the last few months, just sort of sensed that there wasn't a lot of progress being made, but maybe dynamics will change. And if they do, we stand ready to play whatever constructive role we can play. If someone else would like to handle it, they should. But it doesn't appear to be anybody else in the world right now that can handle it. So we're more than happy to do that if the opportunity presents itself to have constructive and productive talks. We're also not interested in getting involved in an endless cycle of meetings that lead to nothing. Okay.
Former ambassador to Russia, Michael McCall, writes, what a complete failure. Trump gave Putin all sorts of concessions, including cutting aid to Ukraine and denying Ukraine's membership in NATO, and then taking off all oil sanctions from Russia, taking off sanctions from financial institutions from Russia and Belarus, and Trump got nothing in return. A sad chapter in American diplomatic history, a sad chapter in history indeed. And this surrender comes at the same time that Steve Witkoff, Donald Trump's envoy to Russia and Ukraine, supposedly announced that he would be taking his 7th visit to Russia to meet with his idol, Vladimir Putin. Trump envoy Witkoff expected to visit Russia again in the near future to meet with Putin and Kirill Dmitriev. That was announced 2 days ago before the official surrender. And of course, we saw Witkoff arriving in Moscow multiple times before, where he basically kisses Vladimir Putin's feet. He puts his hands on his heart and he says, Putin, you are such a strong man. Putin, you are so strong. Utterly pathetic behavior. Let me just remind you the type of things that Witkoff would say, this loser. March 10th, 2026. Witkoff on CNBC. Here's what he said regarding the talks with Russia and Ukraine back on March 10th, 2026. Let's play this clip.
This year? You think you can get a deal this year?
I'm sorry?
You think you can get a deal to negotiate a peaceful end this year in Ukraine?
Well, I mean, look, I'm a logical person. And for me, again, I think that President Trump is generally successful in getting these things settled. In this particular circumstance, and he said it, it's taking longer than he thought. But we're seeing signs that both sides are weary and tired, and hopefully that's the beginning inflection point. Same thing in the Middle East. There was an inflection point where Jared and I both sensed that they were done with the war, and let's hope that we're at that place today, or soon.
All right.
Now, Zelenskyy issued the following message. Ukraine's position is stronger now than in previous years. Since the beginning of the year, 590 square kilometers of our territory have been liberated and brought under Ukrainian control. This trend is certainly not in the occupiers' favor. We continue to increase the rate at which Russian personnel are being eliminated, and together with sanctions in all their forms, this is forcing Russia toward diplomacy. Sanctions in all of their forms refers to, well, yes, the U.S. has removed sanctions against Russian oil, but Ukraine has imposed its long-range sanctions against Russia in the form of Ukrainian FPV drone strikes, destroying Russian oil depots, destroying Russia's fleet. Zelenskyy also posted that he had a call with UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer, French President Emmanuel Macron, Germany's Chancellor Friedrich Merz. The E3 Ukrainian format is what they call it. And as the Trump regime surrenders, they're not being involved in settlement discussions anymore. You have this discussion taking place now among Starmer, Macron, Merz, and Zelenskyy about their involvement in diplomacy, all of these nations working together. Now, Kate from Kharkiv, she posted the following message. So, Rubio says that the U.S.-led peace negotiations between Russia and Ukraine were not fruitful. Not fruitful? Let's look at the facts. Your negotiator visited Russia 7 times, Witkoff, and Ukraine 0 times. You demanded concessions from Ukraine before negotiations even begun, and throughout the entire process, you pressured Ukraine by cutting off weapons support entirely, constantly bad-mouthing us, and showing up at our doorstep waving Russian peace plans you demanded we sign immediately, literally taking Putin's plan and shoving it in our faces. And now, after Ukraine stands more firmly on its feet without your support, you realize you can't pressure us anymore, so your excuse is that you are tired and leaving? How about for once you actually support the victim, which is Ukraine, instead of terrorists like the Russian regime? Send your team to Kyiv, support our fight, and apply real pressure on the aggressor. Sanction Russia, seize their shadow fleet instead of handing out sanction waivers. Do that and maybe negotiations will magically become fruitful. Over in Sweden, you had Mark Rutte, the Secretary General of NATO. Here's what he said about Ukraine's ability. Let's play this clip.
Ukraine is putting up a strong defense. And when you look at the front line at the moment, it is stabilizing. There are even reports that Ukraine is in net terms regaining territory. Not massively, but at least it is stabilizing. And potentially even moving now in the right direction and not any longer in the wrong direction. So from the west to the east and not from the east to the west. And this is amazing. And this is what the Ukrainians are doing. And the Ukrainians have been incredible ingenious in terms of their ability to innovate. And this is one of the things we are learning all over NATO from Ukraine. For example, when it comes to the drone warfare and the anti-drone technologies. This is why we have JTEC, this joint organization in Poland, where we capture all the lessons from the war so that we can figure them in the NATO plans. So I would not be too happy if I was Putin today, but I was never happy if I was Putin, but particularly not the last couple of weeks because things are not going in the right direction.
Yeah, indeed, Ukraine is gaining territory. Also, you had Hungarian Prime Minister Peter Magyar. What a change from Putin's bootlicker Orban to Magyar. What a breath of fresh air over Orban's nonsense, as Kate from Kharkiv puts it. Here's what Magyar had to say. Play this clip.
You know, the territorial integrity of Ukraine was guaranteed in 1994. In the Budapest Memorandum was signed in Budapest, of course. And the problem is that the international stage didn't really do its job and did not guarantee the integrity and the independence of Ukraine. And now we need a peace agreement with real guarantees.
I've learned the hard way that car repairs never happen at a convenient time. Everything seems fine, then suddenly you're staring at a repair bill for thousands of dollars. And with today's vehicles packed with advanced technology, those costs are only getting higher. That's why CarShield makes so much sense. CarShield helps protect you from expensive covered repairs and lets you lock in your rate today so you're not hit by surprise inflation tomorrow. It's a smart, proactive way to protect your budget and your peace of mind. Freedom of movement is a fundamental American value, and nothing kills that freedom faster than being stranded on the side of the road with a massive, unexpected repair bill. Whether you're hitting the road for a well-deserved break or just navigating your daily life, don't leave your freedom to chance. Secure your vehicle with CarShield. Right now, CarShield is offering our listeners 20% off with the code MeidasTouch at carshield.com/Meidas. Visit carshield.com/Meidas to lock in your coverage today and protect yourself from expensive car repairs. Again, go to carshield.com/Meidas and use code Meidas, that's MEIDAS, for 20% off.
Germany's foreign minister, Wadful, here's what he had to say. Play this clip.
With a view to strengthening European security, which also serves the purpose of strengthening the European pillar within NATO, we propose further intensifying cooperation with Ukraine. It's about ensuring that we, through our European NATO partners and Canada, consistently meet Ukraine's specific support needs. The message is very clear. We will not waver in our support. Ukraine always has the staying power. It can always count on our support. That must be the message from Ankara. Therefore, it is still time to be ready for negotiations. We must enter these negotiations with a position of strength.
General Wald, former EUCOM deputy commander, European Command deputy commander, here's what he had to say on state regime media. Let's play this clip.
I support it. I support everything we can do for NATO in the Ukraine issue. I think Ukrainian military and government's done a fantastic job of defending itself. I think it's put Russia in a tough spot from the standpoint they were. The saying goes that Russia had the second best military in the world before it invaded Ukraine. Now they have the second best military in Ukraine. That's a truism. It's not just funny. So I think they've identified a weakness in Russia. I think they've shown great courage, and I think we should support them.
We heard from Senator Kennedy, MAGA Republican from Louisiana. Here's what he had to say to General Smith during a hearing that just took place in the United States Senate. Let's play it.
Is Russia our friend?
Sir, they're not.
Between Ukraine and Russia, who do we want to win that war?
Well, we prefer there not be a war, but obviously...
Well, but there is. Who do we want to win?
Obviously, we want Ukraine to stand independently and not be consumed by Russia.
Okay. Now, when Putin went into Ukraine, he thought he was going to roll in and take it over in 2 days like thunder on a summer night, didn't he?
I believe he did.
But the Ukrainian people have fought back, haven't they?
Yes, sir. They have fought back.
And they now have some of the most sophisticated drone technology in the history of the world, don't they?
Sure, they do. They're doing very well with drones.
And they're giving, with the limited resources they have, they're giving Russia a curb stomping, aren't they?
I would say they are.
In fact, they have knocked out, with their limited resources, 40% of Russia's export ability of their oil. Since January, using their drones and limited cruise missiles, they have hit oil and gas facilities within Russia over 100 times. Not on the border, within Russia, right?
Yes, sir.
And Putin was so scared, he almost had to cancel their military parade. Didn't he?
Well, I'm not sure of that, sir, but I will take your word for that, sir.
Okay.
Then my friend Ben Hodges, former U.S. Army European Command, he was the main general there. Here's what he had to say. Let's play this clip.
I think what we're going to see, even though Ukraine is not invited to join the alliance yet, eventually they will be, because people will wake up and realize that we'll get better the day the Ukrainians are members, just like we got better the day Sweden and Finland as they joined. But these are political decisions. So even though Ukraine is the best military in Europe right now, it's a political decision, not like meritocracy. I do believe that Ukraine has become a net security exporter. The Germans have invited them to come help train their soldiers, which is significant. And then, of course, the Saudis and others are starting to buy Ukrainian counter UAV technologies. I really think that in about 10 years, Ukraine is going to be the heart of European defense industry, much like it was the heart of the Soviet Union's defense industry. I just think that they're so far ahead of everybody. They just can't get the scale yet.
And then I want to bring you into the United Nations hearing in the Security Council yesterday, where Russia called an emergency meeting where Russia said it was the victim of Ukrainian aggression. So Ukraine's ambassador to the United Nations gave what was one of the most powerful speeches I've heard in a long time in the Security Council. This was the Ukraine ambassador to the United Nations. Watch as Russia's ambassador to the United Nations refused to even look at the Ukrainian ambassador. Watch this.
Mr. President, distinguished members of this council, before I proceed with my statement, I want to react to the invitation of Mr. Nebenzia. I'm not sure that I will have any appetite to visit Moscow. Even when Russia is defeated, even when and after Putin's regime has collapsed, even after Russia has paid war reparations, even when the next government in Russia were to beg on its knees for an apology, even after all the Russian war criminals will be sentenced, there will be no reconciliation between Ukraine and Russia for decades, maybe for centuries. I will even refuse to visit Moscow as a member of Ukraine delegation that will travel to Russia to witness Russia's signature of its declaration of capitulation. Mr. President, unlike on other occasions, I will refrain today from thanking the presidency, and I will not extend the customary words of appreciation for the convening of this emergency meeting, as neither the facts nor the circumstances provide any legitimate justification for placing this matter before the Security Council this afternoon. What we have been witnessing over recent months, both at the previous meetings of this Council and today, is a shameless attempt by the Russian Federation to turn reality upside down and to present itself here as a victim. This recurring exercise in political theater staged by Russia in this chamber is not only entirely predictable, but also profoundly disrespectful to the members of this Council. The rationale behind this shameless performance, orchestrated once again by the Russian delegation in this distinguished hall, is as self-evident as the contempt it demonstrates towards its council. The Ukrainian delegation wishes to express its profound concern that Russia, having appropriated the permanent seat of the former Soviet Union at the Security Council, under legally questionable and dubious circumstances, continues to exploit this unmerited privilege with growing cynicism and complete disregard for this council.
Let me show you what he also said. Here, let's play this clip.
Mr. President, the hypocrisy of Russia's Federation knows no limits. The Russian representative routinely uses mirror propaganda, accusing Ukraine of the exact war crimes that Moscow commits daily. Russian troops continue to deliberately target Ukrainian cities as we speak, energy grids and residential areas, while Ukraine surgically dismantles the military infrastructure enabling those attacks. Mr. President, I would pose what is perhaps a rhetoric question to this chamber. For how much longer will the members of the Security Council, those who rightfully serve here, either by virtue of the UN Charter or by the trust vested in them by the General Assembly, continue to tolerate this cynical instrumentalization by Russia, this undisguised mockery at the hands of the Russian self-appointed impostors seated among us?
And then I'll just remind you what Donald Trump said a while ago about bringing peace, that it would be so easy. He would do it right before day one. He guaranteed you, it was his promise, the same way he's going to lower prices, the same way he's going to do this, the same way he's going to do that, is what he was going to do. Peace in Ukraine. He knows Putin well. He knows Zelenskyy well. Easy. Liar. Fraud. Liar. Play this clip.
I would fix that within 24 hours. And if I win, before I get into the office, I will have that war settled. 100% sure. As president-elect, if I win this election, the first thing I'm going to do is call up Zelenskyy and call up President Putin, and I'm going to say, you got to make a deal. This is crazy.
There you have it, everybody. Let me know what y'all think. Hit subscribe. Let's get to 7 million subscribers. Can we get to 7 million, please? Thanks for watching, everybody.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to add the MeidasTouch podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts for new updates every single day.